Hello and welcome to another video. This is Gina from McGuire and I hope you're having a wonderful week. Today I am sharing a spotlight stamp layering technique. The reason I really like doing this technique is it is a great way to create two cards at once. I love 2-for-1 techniques, and it works well with any stamp sets that have some layering to them. I will also share tips for creating shaped cards like the hexagon one you see here. So WPlus has teamed up with Simon Says Stamp to bring this adorable stamp set called Saying Hi. I'll be creating quite a few cards with this stamp set today, showing you how to do a spotlight stamp layering technique. Now this technique could be used with all different kinds of stamps, but this stamp set was perfect and I just had to share it with you. Most of my cards today are also shaped cards. I'm using the WPlus Hexagon die set. I really like this set because I think it's fun to do a shape other than a square, rectangle, or circle, and the hexagon adds a little flair. Now you could use one to just create a shape on your card as you see here, or a smaller shape on your card, or as I'm doing today, I'm going to use the biggest hexagon die to create a shaped card. And I'll have some tips on how to create that. Now you could orient the card either this way where the points are at the top, or you can turn it to the side, which is what I decided to do, so that when I create the card, it'll be able to stand up on its own. So here I'm just kind of planning out where I'm going to stamp. I do this a lot with my dies and my stamps before I get started. I'm using a MISTI stamping tool for my first card examples. However, if you want to do this technique without a stamping tool, I'll show you a way to do that at the end of this video, and I actually like that technique, so be sure to stick around for it. So I have placed the smaller die in the center just as a holding place, so I could center my sentiments right in the middle. And I'm using a T-ruler to make sure that I have it positioned straight before I close the door of my stamping tool onto it. I have created 6 large hexagon die cuts from white cardstock. I did 6 because I plan to make 3 cards, so each card needs 2 hexagons. In the center of all of these die cuts, I'm stamping the sentiment with VersaFine Onyx black ink. I like to use this ink because it's nice and crisp and dark, and you can add clear embossing powder to it and heat set it, giving you a nice raised shiny look. So I'm going through and stamping on all 6, adding the embossing powder to all 6, and then I will heat set all 6. Now let's do the stamping around the sentiment. If you'll notice, I have kind of a spotlight stamping. On the background of my cards, I used soft gray inks, but in the focal point of my cards, I used bold colors. So that's the spotlight stamp layering trick we're going to do today. This is one of those great 2-for-1 techniques. You do the technique once and you end up with 2 cards. Okay, so I have one of my hexagons in my stamping tool, and I'm taking a few of the flower and bird images from that WPlus stamp set and positioning them very close to the sentiment. I find it best to start close to your sentiment and then work your way out. I placed in 3 images, but you can start with as many as you want. Now on 3 of my hexagons, I'll stamp the images with Simon Says Stamp Fog ink. This is the perfect light gray ink. It's actually so light, I'm going to double stamp it just so it shows up more, but you don't have to. Again, I'm doing this on 3 of my hexagons, so I'll end up with 3 where everything's with grays and 3 that are very bright. Okay, so after I've done my 3rd, it's time to do the other 3 hexagons, and these will do in fun colors. So I'm going to start with Hero Art's Soft Pool ink. Again, this is a light ink, so I'm going to double stamp it. This is a stamp layering stamp set where there are images to stamp on top of these first ones. So I want to use light ink here and add the darker touches later. Okay, once we have 3 with the gray and 3 with the color, it's time to add more images. So I'm putting my gray piece back in place, picking some more images, sorry my head gets in the way there, lining them up kind of next to the images I already have stamped. All we're doing is working our way out from the center of that sentiment. So I'll stamp the 3 hexagons with the gray ink, and then we can move on to the color. Remember, if you're only making 1 card, you only need to do 1 gray and 1 colored. Okay, so here I used the Hero Art's lime green ink. I actually used soft granite on the little bird feet and beaks. These images line up very easily. To save time, I'm skipping through a lot of the repetitive stamping. But I find if you're making one card like this where you're lining things up, you might as well make multiples since you have everything positioned. Okay, now it's time for our third round of stamping, lining up lots of images. You can see the more you do it at once, the more time you save. It took me about 2 hours to make all of today's cards, which I don't think is that bad since I ended up with 6 cards, and it's pretty involved. These stamps are very small, so it takes more time to fill in the area. You could use bigger images if you want to save time, but I couldn't resist these. This time I'm using soft vanilla ink for the bottom layer. This is a nice soft yellow. Actually is so soft I stamped it 3 times, but you could leave it with 1 if you wanted to. Okay, now it's time to just continue this. I keep adding more images, stamping them in gray on 3 of my hexagons, and in the bright colors on the other hexagons. Before I know it, I'll have all of the hexagons covered with stamping. Now these were the first layers, the base layer of the images. Remember, this is a stamp layering set, very simple layering too. I found it faster to use an acrylic block to add these second layer detail images. So here I have the center of the leaves. I'm stamping it with a slightly darker color, and I can easily go through and stamp them on each of the hexagons. Now this little bit of detail is going to make a huge difference on this background. It's really going to make all of those images pop. I list all of the colors that I use up in the top of the screen there, so you can check it out. But basically for the bottom layer, I did soft colors, and for the second layer, the detail layer, I did darker colors. Now I did the same on my gray hexagons too. Here I'm coming in with the slightly darker ink, which is Reverse Confetti Stone ink. And I'm stamping all of those second layer detail images with this ink. So all of this inking will be light gray and darker gray. So I'm just going to continue on. I use Sea Glass for the slightly darker pool color ink. I use Butter Bar for the slightly darker yellow ink, and Bubblegum for the pink. And there are also tiny little beaks and feet for the birds. I use Soft Granite for that. You can see here how much detail is added to these backgrounds by adding those second layer images from that WPlus set. They're so easy to line up. Now I'm taking the smaller hexagon die, taping it to the center of one of my gray stamped hexagons, and I'll take one of my colored stamped hexagons and hold it right behind it. You want to hold them together. Together I will run this through my Big Shot Express. Any die cut machine should work. And what will happen is the die will probably only cut through that top layer with the gray stamping, and it won't cut through that bottom layer since I used a super heavyweight cardstock. That's okay, it makes an indentation on that bottom layer. I can then take the die, pop it into that indentation, tape it there, and run it through again. And it'll make sure that I have the hexagon cut on both pieces in the exact same spot. So now I'll have 2 hexagons where I can swap the middles to create 2 different looking cards. On one, the spotlight will kind of be in the center. On the other, it'll be around the frame. 2 different options, and there are so many different things you can do with this. For my first cards, I am matting each of the center hexagons on light gray cardstock. This is Simon's Stamp Fog cardstock that matches that gray ink that we used. Now I want this hexagon to be popped up in the middle, so I took the hexagon die that is one size smaller and cut it from some white craft foam. I'm gluing the smaller hexagon on the back of our matted hexagon, and that will go on the center of our card. I die cut another large white hexagon, and I'm gluing the colorful frame to that, and then in the center I'll glue our smaller hexagon. So I'm putting the lighter gray in the center and then the colorful flowers on the outside. And I'll do the opposite on the other card. On yet another white hexagon, I'm doing a score line about 1/4 of an inch on one side. Now I'm reinforcing that with my bone folder, but I'm not going to leave it folded over. I'm going to lay it back down, and on that little flap, I'm putting some strong adhesive. I decided to use double-sided tape. I'll remove this tape And then I will lay this right onto the back of our colorful hexagon piece. So that flap is not folded over, it's laying flat. The reason I did the score line is now there's a hinge there, so it opens and closes nicely. And check it out, it stands nicely too. Okay, the last thing I did to these cards is I took a light gray Copic marker. I used W1, which matches the Simon Says Stamp fog ink nicely. And I just put lots of dots in the background to fill in any open areas. It kind of pulls the pattern together nicely. So here are my two cards. This one has the spotlight in the center, the colorful stamping in the center, and the other has it on the outside. And what's nice is the pattern continues across the entire card. Even when it switches colors, you have a nice continuous pattern, which is more obvious when there's larger images. I mail these cards in 5x7 envelopes and it works great. I quickly wanted to show you a variation of this hexagon shaped card. This time, instead of die cutting from the center, I just cut like a section out of the center to create these two cards. This is very easy to do. I take one of the gray stamped hexagons and one of the colored stamped hexagons, and I hold them together. As I'm holding them together, I'm going to cut a section out of the middle with my trimmer. So note that there's two hexagons held together here. That way I can be sure that they're both cut in the exact same place. After that, I can go ahead and mat that center section so that it'll stand out, that little spotlight will stand out more. And then I will assemble my cards just like I did on the last example, where I glued all of the pieces together onto the hexagons, added another on the back with a fold so that it opens nicely. Here you can see how our technique today allows the pattern to be continuous across the entire card, which really gives for a better looking card than having the patterns not match up. And keep in mind, this spotlight stamping technique really works with any shaped cards, any stamps. In fact, larger images would take a little bit less time. Now I have my third pair of cards here. One of them I created on the left, just like the cards I did at the beginning. On the right, I decided to take my pieces and glue them onto a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch note card and then trim them off. I just wanted to show you that these hexagon dies work really well on a traditional card shape too. Okay, so now that I've covered how to do spotlight stamping with a stamping tool, I wanted to show you how to do it without a stamping tool, and it's actually very easy. So that's what I did on this card here. This time we'll be stamping on one piece and we'll end up with one card. I have a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch white cardstock piece where I've already stamped my sentiment, and I am just stamping with an acrylic block lots of those images around the sentiment with the Simon Says Stamp fog ink. These are all the base images. We'll add the details later. I'm starting very close to the sentiment and working my way out, and I don't fill the entire piece. I kind of kept it towards the right in the bottom of my panel. Next, I'm taking one of the WPlus hexagon dies, taping it in place and running it through my die cut machine. Now you'll notice on my card, I want the color stamping to be inside of the hexagon. So we need to add color to that. All I'm going to do is stamp right on top of that light gray ink with a colored ink. It's kind of hard to see in the video because my head keeps getting in the way, so I kind of have to edit it out. But all I'm doing is taking the same images, stamping right on top of the gray with a colored ink. Sorry, my head gets in the way. And I just try to line up the stamping as best as I can. You'll notice that it's not perfect, but that's okay. It's a light gray ink. You won't really see it, and it almost looks like a shadow if you're offset slightly. And since the light gray ink is so soft, it really doesn't show through the color, so you end up with bright stamping. I continued to cover up all of the gray stamping with colored stamping. Then I went in and stamped with a brighter ink the detailed second layer images. Here's a closer look so you can see that it really works to stamp on top of that gray ink. Very little shows and the color is still bright. Okay, so once I completed that, I added a Lawn Fawn Mermaid cardstock mat to my colored hexagon. And I'm gluing these pieces onto a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch top folding note card. I again put a piece of white craft foam behind our focal point hexagon and added that to the card too. along with lots of little dots with my gray Copic marker. So here you can see the completed card. It took less time than the cards I did earlier. However, in that case, I ended up with a bunch of cards. But this was pretty quick to do too. And if you don't have a stamping tool, this works great. And even if you do, I would give this a try. So there you have it, another 2-for-1 technique. I hope you'll give this a try. It really is fun to do. It works with a lot of different stamps. If you are interested in the supplies that I used here, I do have them all listed below. You can also check out these 2 videos in the middle. They're related to this one and might be helpful also. I appreciate you spending time with me. I hope you have a wonderful week, and we'll see you soon.